Welcome to Infinite Human, where we explore our limitless potential. Through conversations with guests who have achieved greatness, overcome challenges, and worked to find their purpose, we aim to share and inspire you to do the same. I'm your host, Shona Kerr. I'm a college coach, professor, and businesswoman who is eager to learn from and share in the wisdom of others with you. And on to the show. Today, I am speaking with Michael Toe, who I have had the great fortune to have met playing pickleball. Michael is an actor, a professional pickleball player, financial advisor, and father. He was most recently cast in Taylor Sheridan's TV series Landman, that has boasted the largest TV premiere of any show ever. He was also cast in Sheridan's show Lioness, as well as City on Fire, Blue Bloods, Hocus Pocus 2, Law and Order, and FBI International that is coming out soon. We talk about where and how he grew up, his path into the financial world, and then later into acting. Michael shares how deep personal loss has intertwined with both pickleball and acting for him. Please enjoy the inspiration and wisdom that is Michael Toe. Welcome, Michael. This is just a thrill to have you here to talk with me today. I have been very excited and eagerly looking forward to this. And I know others are going to really appreciate your story and your path from financial advisor to actor to pro pickleball player. There's so much in there and I can't wait to dig in.
Good morning.
Good morning. Coffee in hand and here we go. I really don't know kind of where you grew up, how you grew up, and what that looked like. If you wouldn't mind giving us an insight, that would be really appreciated.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Brookline, Mass, fifth generation Chinese American. Yeah. I had my brother, my sister. We were all kind of sports kids and played all this kind of stuff. And then we jumped into tennis. My brother came to us at tennis at 12. He was 12. I was 14. My sister was 9. And so she was the youngest, and the level of ability or accomplishment in tennis was the reverse order. Brother was in the middle, and I played a year.
It's funny, the youngest tends to rise to the top because they try and reach for their older sibling. So it's kind of not fair to the older sibling.
Yeah, I agreed. It's tough, you know. It's hard that the horrible little quirk in my forehand.
So what age did it become apparent that maybe your sister was going to take the reins on the tennis court?
Oh, it was pretty quick. She, when you start late, a sport like tennis, you have to come in early. And her coming in, really 9 was when she took it serious, but she probably started earlier. And she was world ranked pro player. My brother was a 4-year captain of his team. So it was pretty apparent early when she beat me. This was after I played up to that point, and then gave it up for a long time. But when she played me and beat me lefty, I knew that was not important for me to continue in.
Yeah, that hurts. Oh boy!
This podcast is not going to be public, right?
No, completely private. Yeah.
Good.
And I've seen some of your sister's skills, so I can appreciate the level, and there really is no shame there. That being said, you do have some tennis background, which we'll get to later. Now, school-wise, were you a great student? What were your aspirations? What were you shooting for?
Well, I had relatively undiagnosed like ADD. So I would do, as a kid, I would do like everything. But really where I loved was acting. So I was like the kid who was like always the lead in the plays and as I don't know, 5th grader. And we had a school that went from kindergarten to 8th grade. And every year I was always kind of one of the leads. and it was great. But then in 8th grade, it was when we went to high school, the thing that I thought was cool was not acting; it was playing sports. So we went so gave up the acting because really there was no where I was going to take it, and went and kind of did all my other things that I love doing, but I always loved acting. And that to me was a great place. Being growing up in Brookline is very different now, but back back in the 70s or 80s, we were only one of the few Asian Americans in our part of the town, and it was always I always try to fit in, but it was not always seamless, and there was always, you could see, I definitely felt different. But on stage, it was a very different scenario, because on stage you have the lines. So sometimes, especially with my ADD, sometimes I can go off at different tangents and start to wander. But when you're on stage, you have a certain amount of lines, and no one is going to interrupt you on those lines until you finished your final word, and then the other person comes in. So I had the time to be able to elaborate and go whatever time I took. If my mind was kind of wandering, I could still, if I'm talking in a normal conversation, I kind of rush things pretty fast before I lose the train of thought. But on stage, it was, it was, I had people were watching, and I had the time to finish my lines, and it was a great place to escape to this other character, other world, and I wasn't me, and it didn't, and I could be, anything that this character could fit in. I could shape the character the way I wanted, and it was a great escape. I really really enjoyed it, and but it was still a kid, and it was never anything that I could think about doing further. But I loved it, and it was the furthest from my mind ever that I'd ever get back to it.
Was there a school play in particular that you loved? Was the one that you went, this is me. I really, this is a place I love to be.
There's a play called Fritz and His Dog, which is great. I remember, I remember, that was a lot of fun. That was Fritz. But actually, one that I didn't like that much was Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. And the cool role was not necessarily Sawyer; it was Huckleberry Finn. And that year, that was the beginning of the year when we came for auditions, came in, and there's one kid, and I was pretty talented, relatively, but I didn't, put tons of, I didn't know the idea of working in prep and all that stuff. It was just I just kind of did it naturally. This kid came in fully prepared. He had the corn stuff, the corn thing in his, chewing the corn stuff in his mouth. He had the straw hat, and he had kind of like the ripped clothes. He came in prepared for the role, and I was kind of always established as someone who could get one of the leads, but I didn't go for Tom Sawyer, but Huckleberry Finn, and I'm like, this is mine. And he came in so prepared that I ended up having to be. It was so, I didn't get those top roles. The teacher had to kind of put which was kind of a weird thing for what I would have always done. So they put me in a secondary cast.
Mm-hmm.
But what that taught me was like, boy, sure, you can be talented to some degree, but if if you come in prepared, and the way he blew me out of the water. And at that point on, I'm like, I will never just wing this kind of audition again. It's not. I was humbled, and that's a play that stood out for me. And from that point on, whenever there was a scenario, and I probably take this today, I don't. I take it really serious, and the preparation, because I remember that time when I'm like, this is mine going in, no prep at all, just kind of my normal winging it.
Interesting where these turning points come in your life, and they can seemingly not be a big deal, but it's like, there it is. There's the moment he came in with his straw. I mean, I'm imagining it. It must have been shocking.
Actually, that play was brought out. It was brought in the TV, like a morning local news, that they brought in a small production of this. And I remember I was this third character, but everyone was focused on him and how he was. And I remember as the whole class was watching it, when we watched whatever a few days later, I remember that part of it.
Stuck
Never
with
again.
you. It's been helpful though, I'm guessing. You're doing your acting in school, you love it, which I do find fascinating, by the way, the sort of interplay of ADD and how the almost the stress of the moment focuses oneself in, because most people would be thinking, I'm on stage in front of all these people, oh my goodness. For you, you're like, hey, I've got all the time in the world. This is it. I kind of distills it, and I do get that.
It's a different. It's actually a soothing piece because
Right, it's
everything
where
is.
you thrive. Yeah.
Yeah,
And actually, we'll talk about sport a little bit more later as we get into this. But I think there are parallels in sport that way too. It is just you on a court or you on the field, and that sort of pressure to perform in that moment. But it's you hitting that shot or kicking that ball. And I do
that's right.
think um, that can
And the
be,
preparation too,
and the
where
preparation, yes,
the
yes, and the
work.
parallels there. One has to practice, one has to prepare, and then one has to perform. And yeah, they may seem disparate, but I think they're not in
Yeah,
many ways. Anyway, you're acting in school. You're not really crossing your mind that this could actually lead to a career. What paths did you try and take from there?
yeah. There was always this kind of stereotypical thing, but my parents wanted me to be like a doctor or a lawyer, and in that route. And so I went to school as as a pre med.
Oh,
I went
okay.
to Summers, and right away that first semester, it was obvious that pre med was not my thing. I wanted to be a pediatrician because I love working with kids and to be able to kind of be in a scenario where a doctor could be helpful and kind of patient and caring. It kind of fit into my personality. To think that actually, just as we're talking about it now, it does come in full circle because I do became a doctor on TV.
I know. It's going through my mind too. Yeah.
It's a separate story, but yeah, that didn't work out. Had a great time in college. Learned a lot, very little from school, but a lot socially. I went to UMass, and that was a lot of fun. I grew up a lot there, but then by the time I kind of settled down and focused in, it was kind of too late. So I kind of went to kind of jump from pre med to lawyer. So I became a stockbroker. I worked at when I graduated, went to working at UBS and kind of did the whole grind there. And that's where I was doing like the 80 hours a week, making $14,000 a year. 14,400 is the amount that I paid that
And you
first.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had a grind, and it was one of those jobs where you kind of came in. They had 100 people come in, and all these grads from college, and just kind of threw them in and just threw them against the wall and see who stuck. And after I remember after 100 plus people in the first 2 years, and I remember being like 4 or 5 that remained, but the 4 or 5 who did, went on to pretty good careers. So I was at UBS for many years, and then kind of went off and opened my own shop, and I still do it today.
What gave you the tenacity to become that 4 or 5 people out of 100 that made it
Oh,
through that grind?
it was a grind. It was the person who worked. It wasn't necessarily the person who it wasn't necessarily working smarter, but it was working harder. I remember there was one thing on Friday night. It was like 7 p.m. The rest of the brokers were left, but they were further along. And I remember just staying there calling all, like, oh, we're all Friday night. And I remember staying at 10 o'clock, and everyone was gone from the office. This was at the point where, a bad month and you could be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it was putting more hours in than everyone else. That's something I could control. Right? I could
Mm-hmm.
control. Could I control the results? No. But what I could do is I can control what work I put in. So if I felt like if I put more time than everyone else, that was one of the check marks that I had. Now, if you do that, there's a bunch of stuff that then follows. But if you didn't, but the other stuff you can't you can't control as much. You can't control the results, but you can control the work with it. So that to me was how I kind of was trying to be the differentiator.
Almost goes back to your Huckleberry Finn example of preparation.
Yeah.
You know, you see the guy like, maybe I can't control if they choose me, but I can control what I put in.
Absolutely.
Which is
Absolutely.
just these interesting junctures along the way.
Yeah, sure.
And then you went and set up by yourself with your own practice in financial planning. I mean, that's a big step.
Yeah, and I did that and I still have my firm in New Boston Financial in Brooklyn. The path kind of goes pretty fast. At that point, if you kind of make it through, then and so I did that for, I've done that for 30 plus years, 30 years. Yeah.
It's a good stint.
Yeah.
And still going. But in the process of that, you decide somehow I'm going to be I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to go back to my passion in school. What made you decide, you know what, I think I'm going to go for this? Like, where was that decision point? Where was that key that you turned and just said, I'm actually doing this?
Yeah. Well, at some point, my career was, my firm was fine. I had a good staff, and it was a point where I could kind of, the business was kind of running itself, and I could have gone to the path of just continuing to grow. But with the ADD, all my different things I love doing, I knew there's something else I wanted to do, and it was one of those things where Massachusetts at that point had their Massachusetts tax film credit, where they gave big tax credits for films to come into Massachusetts. Massachusetts, was at that point a much more inexpensive place to shoot than New York City, and you kind of make things around, and it looks kind of like New York in certain things, but at half the cost than New York cost to do. So they had a lot of movies come in. And remember, they needed extras, and they had the movie The Departed, which I didn't know what that was at that point, but I knew that they had these big stars in it. It was Jack Nicholson, Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio. It was Alec Baldwin, big name, and Martin Scorsese film, and they needed extras for this Chinatown scene. So I came in, and it was one of those things that they had it at night. It was like a night shoot. They had us there for a few days, and I remember leaving, after a full night of shooting, leaving at 3 a.m. in Chinatown in Boston. And then as we left, there were, no joke, probably 100 people waiting, fans, to see Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio, as they were leaving closing the scene, just waiting for that one glimpse of him as he walks from the set to his Escalade that came by to pick him up. And I remember, whoa, this is cool. I remember, boy, I remember this part. I used to love this, and as a former actor, I remember I used to having those dreams of the forgetting your lines, going up to on stage. Actually, this back to the Tom Sawyer thing. I remember one time he got up on stage and forgot to bring the dead cat as I did the Huckleberry Finn, the backup role. And I remember going up, and the teacher was like, "Just go out and get the cat, and go get the cat." And I'm like, which means I had to break character, and I kind of froze. But I remember that, and that's as an actor, forgetting your lines is the worst thing. I remember having those dreams a lot, and being and then waking up this is not. I'm not an actor. I gave that up.
That's funny. That's funny.
And then it came back full circle. But so that it was there was the tax back to the story. It came back as a tax credit, and so they brought films here. So I'm like, all right, I'll just do it. And then there was an opportunity that they needed. So I did a lot of those kind of background for some big films. It was fun. It was nothing. There's no acting in it. It was just extras. But it got to be on set, and I could kind of see some of these people do what I used to love doing. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Then they had a role for this show called Brotherhood. It was with Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs is Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter series, the guy with the long gray hair. Really great actor, great guy, but very scary. Um, and he had this show called Brotherhood. It was based on the Woody Bulger stuff. So they needed 2 Asian people to be kind of like drug dealer guys. And it, my brother was doing it with me at this point. And he kind of got me started. It was not a big, I saw it, he told me about it. Not a big deal. I wasn't acting at that point. So then like a few weeks later went by and they still needed people. And my brother's like, they still needing people. Let's try it. And I'm like, all right, fine. We went to go do it. First audition ever as an adult. And sure enough, we got the role. So we were no experience at all professionally. And that's how I got my SAG card. And at that point, I never looked back.
Now I'm inspired by the fact that you do so many things, and you went for it. You just went for it. It's there, and you went for it. People go through acting school. You did not.
I do go for it, but I go for it in a practical way. So I still had my firm. This was not a serious thing. This was as I went in it serious, but it wasn't a serious thing where if it failed, I still worked during the day. So
right.
I did, so when I did it as a hobby, but like anything else that I kind of usually do, I do it. This is the hyper focus part of the ADD where
there you go. Yep.
I came in it and said, all right, this is fun. I love doing this. I'm going to try to be the best actor I can as a hobby. There's no aspirations. It's like, all right, well, what's in front of me? This is all right. There's one role here that I'm going to try. I'm going to do whatever I can to train for it. Oh, well, I don't have acting school, 4 years at Juilliard that some of the other people have, or people have been for years and years and years. And so I said, all right, well, how am I going to get myself a chance? Well, I have to train, and I have to practice, and I have to learn the business, and I have to, understand what the difference between doing something, for example, on stage is very different than auditioning for something on camera. On stage, you can, but as camera, you have to really be, you have to be much more still. It's much more, camera can focus in and be much more intimate, and kind of takes a lot of your expressions. Whereas in theater, it can be really, really big. So it's a very different way of auditioning. So I said, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do the best way I can. And even though it's going to be a hobby. And so there was like smaller roles in Massachusetts as these movies came in. They hired everyone out of LA and New York, but any of the smaller like waiter roles and things like that, they would hire locally. And so I would, do the best to kind of get those roles, and got a few of those. And then at some point I'm like, all right, well, I can't get any more. So I'm like, all right, well, luckily, some people looked at it the other way, but luckily the 2 major markets in Hollywood it's Hollywood and New York. And, New York is, some people look at it as, again, I'm not there, but it is a 4.5-hour drive from Boston. So, hey, I can drive it. And so if I did my financial planning stuff and kind of moved my things around, I could go to New York. So I would start to go down in New York and do kind of I did more all-nighters as a 35-year-old with, at that point, probably 3 kids, than I did at UMass, and that says a lot.
Yeah, that does. That's incredible. Sounds like you thrived on it. Sounds like it fed you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was the part of kind of a challenge and trying to make my way into a city that I never really went to, much, and kind of going in there blind, but seeing, and there's a lot of good actors in New York, but I realized that at some point, yeah, there are a lot of actors, but the top is if you're top in an area, it's not that different than top necessarily in Massachusetts, but there's a big disadvantage. I didn't know people, so that was the point of like having to grind, having to make sure that the training was back to the point of, for cold calling as a photographer, putting in more hours than everyone else. Or if I train more than everyone else, I'm going to be, that's what I can control. And eventually when you kind of do that week over week over week, you end up being, it does have some payoff. And so then at that point, there was, I would get an agent in New York and started getting roles in New York. And it was 2018. So this is after kind of 10 years of kind of dabbling in it. 2018, where I started getting some momentum as an actor. But I still was doing just things in New York. So I was a pretty established actor at that point, 2018, but only in New York. Because to audition, you had to audition in person.
Got it.
Then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
And when COVID hit, what happens is they couldn't audition people in person anymore. So they transitioned from in-person to self-tape auditions. And when you have things on self-tape, now instead of the 10 spots they have in an LA Hollywood office to see people, they could see, instead of 10, they could see 100. And it could be from anywhere, including Boston. And so that's where, and they'd pick the best actor at that point because they'd have to fly people in for those bigger roles anyways. And then after COVID was where my career kind of took the biggest jump.
That's interesting that COVID sort of helped you out in the process. Now, as an Asian American, did you find yourself getting picked for certain roles more than others? Did you find yourself getting pigeonholed? Was it frustrating? How was that experience?
Yeah, it's very different now. Probably since Crazy Rich Asians in 2019, I think, 2018, 19, roles were, you remember, growing up, the type of roles, when you ever saw an Asian person, it was Asian male. It was, a lot of times it was yellow face. So like Mickey Rooney in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was characters, non-Asians playing Asians. When you saw, it was like Long Duck Dong and 16 Candles, roles like that. You would have, it was very, they were kind of the sidekick. They were nerdy. They were either gangster or the restaurant worker. They always had an accent, English. It was always like a lot of those kind of roles. And never at that point you had Bruce Lee, and even he had issues. And on that, it was, you didn't see Asian males in any real significant roles back then. And when I was growing up and when I first started acting. So all the roles were very, very stereotypical. And I would get pretty pissed off at that, because a lot of people look at media as a way of saying, oh, this is what people are like. If you grew up and you didn't know, and you didn't have a lot of, Asians near you, and you saw the butt of a joke and the one who looks really weak and non-athletic and not the guy who got the girl, that's what you kind of thought. You thought someone who's always had an accent who wasn't cool. I mean, that's people kind of take that into, all right, that's how people are. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, that why is that? And I started seeing the shows that were put out, and I kind of see who wrote the shows and who produced the shows and who directed those shows. And at that point, I'm like, well, at some point, and the turn was, I'm like, well, I can actually change that, because if I get some of these roles, I could play a certain role, and they require so many, like probably 50% of the auditions that I had accents. I remember doing a movie with Bradley Cooper. And Bradley Cooper, who is an American sniper, he's kind of like, you kind of think of an all-American. That's actor. That's who you might think. I remember we were in the movie Joy. We were having a conversation, and it turned out that his grandmother, I think, came from Poland in 1938. And I remember and having the conversation. I'm like, actually, my great grandfather was born in San Francisco in 1891, and here I am playing characters who have, accents, immigrants who just fresh off the boat, small roles, and here he is, Mr. All-American. And I remember we had he's a great guy. We had such a great conversation about it, and he understood the dynamics of it too. And we were talking about it. It was really funny.
Yeah, it's painful actually, and I give you credit for saying I'm going to change that.
Yeah, because when you get a role, you can play it character wise, or you can play. Actually, there's nothing wrong with someone with an accent or has a different language, but it's if you play it as a character. But if you or one note, But if you can actually play a character with some depth, with some layers, with an arc, with dreams and hopes behind the scenes, you still limited what you have on your words that you have to say, your lines, but have some depth to that character. That's something that I could control. And then so for the years, I had the ability to move to producing and directing, and then having larger roles, you have a much bigger impact on your character and your character direction, what your character says, or that I know I'm supposed to be someone who came from China trying to save his son, but I don't think he would say this kind of role, this word here. And then at that kind of level, you can say the director would say, "Oh yeah, let's change, say it the way, let's change it, we'll call in the writer, and we'll adjust the script here." Now I can do that, but it took years to do that, to get to that point.
Well, I give you a lot of credit, and some people might have just said, "Hey, I guess I'm stuck with this. I'll go with this." To say, "Hey, I'm going to humanize this role with what is in front of me," I think is admirable and much appreciated. And what advice would you have for Asian Americans, young Asian Americans thinking about acting or in acting, in terms of that?
Well, I mentor a lot of youth who kind of come up to. I'm doing a play right now, and there's a few actors who are great actors, great theater actors, but they didn't know what the path is to kind of go towards film and TV. And so kind of helping them kind of set up, kind of moving out to more into New York, and what I did. I kind of tell them it is not easy. You can't go into as a stockbroker where 100, after 2 years, 96 people are gone out of 100. You can't say an actor where thousands of people trying to be an actor. You could be the best actor in the world. The odds are not with you. So to me, that's why I kind of had the point where I have the safety piece now, and so I could get the training. I could afford the training and the headshots and kind of stuff that I wanted to do. But I also had a job that I was working 10 hours a day. And so there's a trade-off. And so I'm very realistic with the people that I kind of mentor and talk to. You have to it's not something that you could be 3-4 years in and really have very little to show for it. So that includes money, that includes pressure from friends and family. So many actors give up after they're so close, they're so talented, so close to breaking out, but never stay in it long enough. So to me, I always recommend to kind of go my route. If you really go at it, if you're going into an audition where you have to, if you don't get that audition, you can't pay your rent. There's too much pressure there. It's already you're already against you, but to have the pressure of the financial pressure as well is really tough. So I kind of tell it like it is. And to me, I think the route that I took was in some ways, even though the hardest from a time perspective, it was the easiest for me in terms of the safety piece. So now when I go on an audition, if I didn't get it, I didn't get it. It's not like I need to pay my mortgage or anything like that. That's already set.
Again, there's some parallels to sport there too. If you're trying to make your money playing the sport and you need to win that tournament that you've paid to go to, the pressure of that is such that can be disabling to you actually even performing. But you still put in the grind. I know you had the fallback, but the overnights in New York, I can't even imagine the tiny amount of sleep, if any, that you were getting. That's insane.
Oh, it was
insane.
I really that part of the it was a lot of fun though, because I would try to maximize all my time. If I was driving down 4.5 hours down to New York, I could work I had 4.5 hours to work on my lines. Calls with my for the financial side, I would say calls on the with my assistant on the way back. And, I had three kids, and so it was at some point I would try to merge all those things. So I would do plays where my daughters would join in, or we'd have films that we would do small little things, and I would bring them in. So I remember bringing my daughter in one time on a movie with Matthew McConaughey, and so it was called Sea of Trees, and so she got a chance to kind of come in and be a little girl in the scene with Matthew McConaughey. And I remember, so to me it was perfect. It was the merging of family and passion of what I love doing.
And you were the coolest dad at that point. I mean, nothing beats that.
Not really. It was maybe the one day out of the year that their friends happened to see, me in something fine. I was cool that day, but then it went right back.
Just dad, annoying dad. Most recently, you had a part in Landman, which has been the biggest TV premiere ever. If I'm reading this, there we go. We got the coffee mug. Biggest TV premiere ever. And what a special thing to be part of. How was the experience filming that?
It was great. I mean, it came back to, it goes back to me, fate. I end up getting, in 2022, I end up getting a series regular, meaning in every episode of a show called City on Fire on Apple. And it was about a father whose daughter gets in a very serious accident, and it's the father and the daughter in my storyline of dealing with the daughter who's in a hospital and dealing with that. When we finished shooting a month later, the daughter was 19 years old on TV. A month later, in real life, my 19-year-old really got in an accident and passed away. And everything was the same, from the hospital, the conversations, the doctors, that everything that I did on the series happened a month later in real life to me. And I remember, and even in the hospital of this actor, her name is Chase Sweet Wonder. She's a fantastic actor. All around, we had pictures in this hospital room of me with my real daughter, because so we had so it was actually with her. And I remember the day, this kind of longer part of the story, but it comes into Landman, is that the day that I got the news, I was actually playing pickleball, but I was in the middle of an audition, and it was audition for the show called, at this point, I didn't know what it was, or they didn't tell what it was, but it ended up being the show called Lioness, which is by Taylor Sheridan. And it was the audition was 4 scenes. I remember doing 2 scenes of it, and then saying, I'm going to play some pickleball, come back and finish the other 2. Well, we never finished those other 2. I got the news that my daughter was in the hospital in a serious condition, and she ended up passing, and I never finished those other 4 scenes. But at some point, I had sent it off to my friend before, and he said, I'm going to send this in anyways. So he said, just send me at this point, I was in a fog, but they sent my 2 scenes in out of 4, unedited, and just sent it in. And about a month later, I ended up getting the role in Lioness, which stars Zoe Saldana, Nicole Kidman, Morgan Freeman, and it was Taylor Sheridan, who his world Yellowstone, of the Yellowstone world. It was his new series, and what the role was a doctor who deals with Zoe Saldana's and Dave Annabelle's daughter, who comes in. He, friend of the father of Zoe Saldana's husband, and the daughter comes in from a serious accident. So what really it was where I was in City on Fire, where I played the father grieving. To me, I think it's fate that it used me to prep me emotionally for what was supposed to happen in real life when my daughter passed. But this was the flip. This was the doctor dealing with a scenario of a teenagers getting hit by a car, and dealing with playing from the doctor's side of what happened really to my daughter. And if you watch any Taylor Sheridan stuff, it's very realistic. It's not like Grey's Anatomy, very kind of like this was like a movie. He did Sicario. This was like 100 extras, 8 ambulances in a real hospital, police officers, doctors, nurses, and it felt so real. So it was very emotionally draining, and I give the cast members a lot of credit for casting me, because when I was actually in that role, it was about a month and a half, maybe 2 months after my daughter had passed. At one point, I thought I was going to break down, because it was so realistic when the daughter was screaming. So
that's heavy, and
It was
I don't know. Was
very
it
heavy.
cathartic? Was it cathartic in any way, or was it just painful?
Oh, yes, that I
Okay.
think it was meant
Yeah.
full. And and this is the longer story to Landman. Is yes, it was cathartic, and I remember having a conversation with Nicole Kidman about it. She did Rabbit Hole, which was the movie about a mom and dad losing a child, and we had a very close conversation about that, and she was so supportive. But she had actually given me a lot of she's and this was before she had given before we had this conversation. She said, one of the things that I give you the biggest compliment as I can as an actor. It was this: is that you played your role so believable, and that she said that was my biggest compliment that I could give to an actor. And I at that point I remember getting that from Nicole Kidman and feeling after all this hard work to get that compliment from Nicole Kidman. But to me, it directly went to my daughter, as my
Right.
daughter is um, as part of as kind of her setting this up for me. Um, and at that point, I knew that there was something more to this role. It was kind of I've been in played a lot of roles before, but I knew that this had more legs for some reason. It wasn't the largest role, but Taylor Sheridan, I don't know, maybe after it came out, all of a sudden my agents get a call, and they said we offered there's a new Taylor Sheridan show, and we're offering him a role on Landman, and so it came from Lioness, but I kind of did a scene. I got thrown into a scene where it was with Demi Moore and Billy Bob Thornton, and come in, and all of a sudden we finished. I came right in. They kind of pulled me in from the trailer, no prep because they had the scene before, and just throw me right into the scene. And it was pretty heavy dialogue, really long, very emotional. Lot of stuff going on, and then we finished shooting that first scene. And when I film, I don't wear my glasses and I don't wear contacts because contacts make me blink. So I can kind of see right in front of me, but that's about it. And all of a sudden we finish cut, and I see coming over this kind of this big white cowboy hat, and then he comes right up to me, and it was Taylor Sheridan, and he is the creator of all these Landman, Lioness, Yellowstone, as I mentioned. And he's like, anytime we have this kind of scenario, I'm going to have you in. And it was really, really cool. And because I didn't know why I got the offer. I knew I got the offer, but was it the casting director? Was it the producers? I didn't know why. He's like, when I had you in Linus, and I saw you in Linus, I'm like, I need you back. So it was really kind of cool. And then we had the premiere, as I mentioned, in LA a few months ago, and or a month ago, and that was a lot of fun. And this Landman series is fantastic.
It has taken off. And I mean, how incredibly validating for you. You've earned every piece of it, obviously, but to get that validation as well is a massive testament to you. And the red carpet, I saw pictures and video from the red carpet. Nobody's cooler than you, Michael.
It was a lot of fun. I tell you, that was the one day of the year that my daughters I have three daughters, and the younger two were like, all right, maybe he'll be cool for that day. Hollywood doesn't have a lot of premieres these days because of the streaming, and so it was a lot of fun with these mega stars.
I'm so happy that Landman is getting the success that it is, and Yellowstone was huge, I know, but I think Landman has been bigger, and certainly more people I know are watching Landman. I mean, this is super mainstream. So now the way you and I met was through pickleball, which now I know you have a little tennis in your background, and that's where that big forehand comes from. But sort of how did you get into pickleball, and what has it meant to you so far?
Well, it was my brother, who is a pattern again. Into the summer 2022, something like that. He started having my sister and I, family over, and he set up in his driveway this sport called pickleball, and set up this, like, I think it was chairs it was in his driveway, and I think he had chairs and, like, different tables as the net. So it was really kind of like a furniture as as the net. And sure enough, we enjoyed playing. And then at the end of the day, it was my sister against my sister and I, and we had this epic battle, knowing really the rules. We probably played some wrong rules, but it was great. It was actually very similar to my acting stuff, in that I'm like, this is fun. I love this. This is kind of cool. I could see playing this, and I did it as a hobby. All right, this will be kind of cool. But then, but and we kind of just did it for fun. But then when my daughter passed, um, it became a very different thing. It became an escape to me, because when you're on a pickleball court and you're playing for that 2 hours, you can't really think of anything else. And if you do, you can, but you're going to get pelted with the ball, and you're going to lose. And so you really have, if you have other thoughts, they're in, but they have to go right out. It's not, you don't have, it's not something that is, you have to be really good to forget about. No, when you're playing pickleball, you have to focus on every shot. It's very easy to kind of escape. And that, to me, is what pickleball was. It was a bit back to the point of being cathartic again. To me, it was more than just a sport. And I remember the last Father's Day that I had with with Alana, my oldest daughter, and she wrote, and this is the back to the point. They never gave me credit. They kind of poo-pooed any of my stuff they did, but I remember that she's like, I am so proud to have as a dad a professional actor and a soon-to-be professional pickleball player. And this was 2 years ago, so this was it was like a dream. But I remember I still have that letter that she gave to me for Father's Day, and I'm like, all right, that's going to be my goal. And so for the last 2 years, I have been really training really hard and kind of using the same kind of thing as from the financial planning stuff, the acting stuff, of saying, all right, well, I'm not going to make a huge money thing from this, but I'm going to be the best player that I can. And if I'm going to spend time doing this, it's been so helpful for me in my journey of dealing with grief, and it's given back to me so much. Not just me, my wife as well. She's loves playing. She's a beginner, but not a beginner, but someone who's just enjoys playing. And she's not a sport person, found pickleball, and to her, same idea, to be able to get on this court and meet people, some great people that she plays with, and doing all this stuff. It's given our family so much. And so if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this the way I kind of do everything. Is I'm going to really kind of immerse myself in it and learn the best. I might not learn the fastest. I might not be the fastest. Some people who are really, really good, and I'm not that level. I'm like, fine, I'm going to have to train harder. Well, yeah, I'm going to have to train harder. And actually, I do think that I'm going to train harder. I'm going to have to all work. And this is the thing that always held me back from tennis. Was I started at 14. And when you start at 14 in a sport that someone's playing at 8 or 9, you're at a big disadvantage. Well, I'm like, well, here, I'm now 50, and now the ability to play in the senior pro area. Well, I don't have the restrictions of not being able to get the lessons. I can get the lessons from it. I can train and work. I can train. I can control my schedule. If I want to train from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., I'm going to do it. And so, and especially during with acting, especially when there's a lot of downtime sometimes between jobs, this to me has been really my focus. I have a long way to go, but I'm taking the same passion as I did with acting, into pickleball. And it's been amazing, the trip of all the people that I met, including yourself and Scott and my friends that I play with, and Todd and Captain Todd, and
Captain
I get
Todd,
my
yes.
Sydney, all Don and Sam, all these people that I've got a chance to meet, that are my friends, and Laura, TJ. Oh, I remember all these guys who have been so supportive of me, and friends on the court. when I travel for acting, a lot of times pickleball is such a popular sport these days that when I go to a certain town, when I shot in Landman in Fort Worth, Texas, I joined into a local pickleball group, and they welcomed me in. I was playing every day that when you out shoot on a set, you don't shoot every day. A lot of times it's a downtime, so I got a chance to meet new people in Texas and California and Baltimore and Georgia and Florida. All these different people. So much fun. And I've really have really enjoyed the sport and this new challenge of being being a senior pro pickleball player.
I've been watching your game, and it's only getting better. And I've seen your work ethic. I get it, and I see where you're going, and I am excited for that. And thank you for sort of explaining what it's been for you, because people have been sick of me saying it, but this little sport has literally changed people's lives. I've seen it over and over and over in many situations, and I'm a big fan of what it can do. It's certainly been that for you. But yes, look out, Senior Pro World, because Michael is coming. No doubt. No doubt. I mean, such a bohemian, from your financial planning to fully fledged successful actor to burgeoning senior pro pickleballer. What are your hopes and dreams moving forwards? What are your aspirations? What's still left to achieve for you?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot. But one thing with having a lot of passions, the passions that the way I take these things, a lot of times I don't have a lot of time for other things. So it's family, work, acting, and pickleball. I think that's enough. So to me, this is where I'm on. I'm looking for that the next series regular role for an acting job. Hopefully another Taylor Sheridan show. I just came back from Budapest for FBI International. That's going to be a lot of fun. So to me, it's getting but those are kind of coming as guest stars. I want to come in as a series regular on a show, and for pickleball, really being a solid senior pro pickleball player. That to me is what I'm really training for and working hard on.
I love it. Anything else you want anyone to know out there as we're looking to wrap this up?
Yeah, take a watch on Landman. Great series.
Well worth it. Well, thank you for everything you're doing in your advocacy. This will be very inspiring to others. I thank you for taking the time, and can't wait to get back on court with you.
Absolutely, Shona. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been Infinite Human with me, Shona Kerr. Until next time, keep challenging yourself and make others better along the way.